And it's working. It's working, and we are introducing that. And for example, when we compare the results of the last year, we decreased the number of homicides around 38%. It's not only because of that, but it's started to work on August. So I think that because we have around 700 alarms during these months, and I'm pretty sure that some of these alarms avoid some of the serious aggression or even some homicide. So these are the things that if you are a follower, you are following up how is changing the circumstances in society, you can introduce new strategies to avoid and prevent aggressions, and this way to act against gender-based violence. But because of that, because we are in a changing situation, society is a changing situation, we have to consider also that all our policies, all the policies focused on gender-based violence, even on equality, is also helping to change the society. This way, we are introducing new references, and we are introducing new references very quick. So it makes sometimes some kind of reaction from some social part, and specifically from the part of society who are more concerned about equality, and within this part, some men who are living on the benefits and the privileges to use this inequality and to use gender-based violence. We can see this reaction, for example, when we compare, as part of the observatory, the different modus operandi that in the different years. And we are seeing how is increasing stabbing, for example, is decreasing firearms to get the homicide, and in general, it's increasing the kind of modus operandi that need more time to commit the homicide, and the one who decrease the distance. So it's increasing stabbing, and it's increasing traumatism, and decreasing the one who needed less time to get the homicide and a longer distance to kill the woman. And also, we can check that if we compare the average of stabs to get the homicide when they use stabbing. So it has increased from 16 to 28. So there is more violence, is more aggressiveness in the way that they produce the homicide. And when we analyze the situation of men, or a group of men, and we see that they have two options under this new changing situation, they have the possibility to adapt or the possibility to resist. And what we are checking is that they decide to have or develop a resistant adaptation, a kind of to say no, but in a different way. This is what we call post-machismo, because it's more intellectual, it's not so aggressive. They talk about equality, they talk about feminism, they talk about real equality, because we have to consider men and women, not only women. We have to correct not only the circumstances of women. So they are playing with data, and they are playing with many pseudo-scientific arguments to present their ideas, that basically what they pretend is to criticize the advances in equality. They don't give an alternative. They only want to criticize, because if they criticize and they stop the advance, we will keep on the actual situation. So it's a very interesting, because they play very well with mass media, and they try to use all this argument to stop the advances on equality, because they want just to stay as they are in this moment. So the idea or the concept of post-machismo is because it was born on the crisis of postmodernity. It's coming from many years ago, around the end of the 70s, more or less, and little by little, they are more organized and they use a better argument. But basically, it was born in that moment because it was when the institutional feminists start to develop policies, specifically addresses to fight directly, objectively, against inequality. It's not only a social movement, it's started to be a political decision that was developed in the late 70s, beginning of the 80s. So what happened with postmodernity is that under the crisis of these years, at the end of the 70s, postmodernity criticized the past, specifically the references of the 18th century, because these old references finally or end on the crisis in that moment, because they wanted an alternative future. They wanted a different future, not a future under the references of the 18th century. So post-machines, what did in that moment is, under the crisis of that moment, they criticize the future because they want the references of the past. So they use the crisis, but with a completely different sense and with completely different idea. And it gets stronger because the perception of the success of the feminists and the equality theories, and because the organization of women get a stronger position also in society. And now they are very strong because they notice that we are not talking only about time and sceneries. We are talking about identities. We are talking about what means to be a man and what means to be a woman. And this is what really scared them, because they know and they find out that there are many different ways to be a man and many different ways to be a woman. And we are breaking with the old and single references that they use to construct their model in society. So it means reaction, and it means that we need information, because information means prevention, because information is in some way knowledge. So we need to work very much, and we are trying to do with the mass media, because they are the one who transmit our knowledge to society. It's true that we are focused on a very deep knowledge and studies, service and everything, but people outside of this world don't know anything about that. What they know is basically, as the Eurobarometer and our study in Spain prove, is about media, specifically about television. If we don't work with the media, they are not going to transmit the right messages, and we are not going to be successful in our objectives. So this is something very important that we are doing in Spain, and I think that we have to translate also to the European institution, specifically to the Institute for Gender Equality. So under this perspective, we present under the Spanish presidency our proposal. We found out that all the countries has done many things to fight against gender-based violence, but the commitment is not enough, because we need some instruments to give coherence and to facilitate the coordination that we need for that. In fact, if we compare what we have done in all the different member states to fight against gender-based violence, we can conclude that there is something wrong, because if we are trying to fight against the same thing and we are doing in a very different way, there is something wrong on that. Because when we talk about unemployment, about a health problem, about whatever, we are pretty similar in our policies, in our strategies, in our ideas. If we are doing something very different to tackle that same problem, it means that there is something wrong in the concept or in the initiative. So we said that we cannot keep separately to fight against gender-based violence. We need to be together. And this is the idea to develop a European strategy. And we present under this idea our proposal that was accepted in the EBSCO meeting in March the 8th. And these conclusions now are based on 7 axes with different proposals. And I would like to emphasize the paper of the European Observatory because it's very important to have this information, to follow the situation because it's changing, and I think it's the way to get knowledge, and to get knowledge very quick, to give the right answer as the circumstances are changing. I think that the observatory has to be in the European Institute for Gender Equality,